All right, Ray, we have a lot of auto manufacturers that are really having a lot of trouble right now. And one of the biggest ones that is really they've used the disaster mode, crisis mode. They've used this
Emergency mode.
Emergency mode is the phrase that they've used in some of their calls, in some of their earnings reports, and that is Nissan. Nissan forecasts that they're having a 17% cut to their U.S. production this year. And we've seen that, Stellantis, we're seeing Ford having vehicles stack up. And a lot of this conversation we usually talk about is around affordability. But with Nissan's situation, they have some vehicles that are actually affordable in this market. They have some low 20s vehicles. So maybe affordability is not all that's really the issue, especially in Nissan's case. So what's going on with Nissan right now?
Well, it's kind of disturbing when you think about it. For a manufacturer to project the number of vehicles they needed or were expecting to produce in a fiscal year, and their fiscal year ends March 31st, 2025. So basically they're 7 months in, 8 months in, and they're saying, oh my God, we're off by 17%. That's huge. Okay. That is a huge discrepancy between what you had planned to build and what you thought you could sell to what you really need to build and to what is really selling. That's just an absolutely staggering decline in production and sales to find yourself in. I know the Rogue in many cases is sitting. I know the Pathfinder in many cases is sitting. But goodness gracious, to have to cut your production by almost 20% for the remainder for the fiscal year after going through 8 months of your fiscal year, that either they are no good at projections or the poop really hit the fan, and it's finally starting to sink in.
So I want to look at some of these new Rogues and look at just some price points. This is around my area. So 2024 Rogue, you got $29,000. You got $29,000, 29. These are all $29,000. There's a used one, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about these new ones right here. But $29,000 in this market for a small SUV is, it's a pretty good price. My issue would be that you can find RAV4s now right around that $30,000 price point too. So is it a factor that, okay, Nissan, they're not necessarily known for their reliability necessarily. They're not known for their reliability, right? Transmissions have been a problem for however many years that they've had the CVTs. Is it a factor that they're just not able to compete with the competition in a similar price area? Because the CRV is going to be priced around that area. The RAV4 is going to be priced around that area. Is it just that consumers, the only way that they're going to go to Nissan is if they're saving $5,000 or $6,000 compared to their competition?
The only other way is if they can't get approved for a loan on that Toyota or Honda, and Nissan Motor Acceptance Corporation will give them a loan. I think part of the issue is that people's perception is their reality, and people's perception of Nissan is that of the major Japanese brands, Toyota, Honda, Nissan, Mazda, Subaru, that at this point, in most people's perception, Nissan would be at the bottom. They would be the fifth on the list of those five brands. And the perception is that they are not nearly as good as Subaru, Mazda, Honda, Toyota. And so that perception, I think, is impacting sales. that people are not as desirous of a Nissan product today as they had been at one time. Nissan was always considered for the longest period of time the third leg of Japanese auto manufacturers. It was always Toyota, Honda, Nissan. And now I really believe it's Toyota, Honda, Mazda, Subaru, Nissan, or maybe Toyota, Honda, Subaru, Mazda, Nissan. But the perception of the Nissan brand is not nearly as good as the perception of the other Japanese brands. And so I think most customers would prefer to have one of the other four brands before they would ultimately end up settling for that Nissan.
Yeah, I agree with you. So what do you think fixes this? Because it seems like even with Nissan bringing out all their incentives and bringing out this extra money that they're helping dealers out with right now, I mean, they're adding money on the front end of Rogues for dealers, and they're adding them on the back end of Rogues. I think the one of the last reports I saw, they were giving some dealers like an extra 1,000, 1,500s for each additional Rogue that they were taking. And then if they met their goal of selling these Rogues, they were giving them another $1,000 on the back end. Now, I've got a buddy who's a franchise manager at a Nissan store, and he laughed at the back end stuff because he's like, sales goals are something you're just never going to touch. So it's just kind of like just them spitting in their face, like, okay, if you hit 120% of your sales goal, they're like, we're trying to hit 50% of our sales goal. What are you talking about? Anyway, so what has to happen, because they can only lower prices, I mean, so much, and if they're already not really comparable as far as reliability with Toyota and Honda, how much less do they have to lower their prices to get this stuff to move?
Well, what do they need to do to correct it? I don't know. Could they work on building a better quality vehicle?
But that's years down the road. What
Well,
can
I
they do right
understand it,
now?
but this is not a dilemma that's going to be solved overnight. You at a certain point, you have to repair your reputation, because if all you're going to do is continue to cut the prices of your vehicles, that doesn't repair the reputation. That just confirms what people's concept or reputation of that brand would be, that it's a lower tier brand, lower quality, and you get to buy it for less money than everything else because it's such poor quality. And they very well might not be that poor quality anymore, but the perception still is. So what do? How do you change that around? You come up with some special cars that design wise just, I don't know, speak to people, and people go, well, I never would have thought of a Nissan before, but this car is so hot looking, or this vehicle is so hot looking, that I think I'd have to give it a try. And then the other way, I think, is to, if you're perceived to have quality issues, then come out with a better warranty. Okay. Come out with a much stronger warranty that says to your customer, we are so sure about the new quality of our vehicles moving forward that we feel comfortable giving you a 5-year, 60,000 mile bumper to bumper warranty and a 10-year, 120,000 mile powertrain warranty. That starts to build confidence in the public, the buying public again. But if the perception is, okay, well, it's a cheap piece of crap, and it's got your basic 3-year, 36,000 mile warranty, and after that I'm kind of doomed. How do you change that perception? And I think you have to really step up the warranty game. You have to play along those lines, that we're so confident of the vehicles that we're building that we give you X, which is twice as long or 3 times as long as anybody else, and then people they'll buy it with confidence, knowing that even if the damn thing breaks down, it'll be covered under warranty. Um, I don't know. I think that's what you need because you can't just keep lowering the prices.
I wonder a lot about these Nissan dealerships, and there's been reports out that they're like 90% of their profits like evaporated just like that when Nissan started having problems. And I don't even want to ask my buddy who is a franchise dealer at this Nissan store about the situation of, okay, well, how do you survive in this situation? Because it's his livelihood, right? It's a store
Sure.
that he's running. So my question is to you. You went through 2008 when you were in the industry, and a lot of these dealerships, I would assume, were having a similar, if not worse, situation than a lot of these Nissan dealers are dealing with right now today. Um, were there any things that came from the manufacturers to come in and help these dealerships, or were the manufacturers like, okay, everybody's struggling, so you're just on your own and you got to figure it out?
Well, a lot of it was everybody struggling, and you're on your own, and you got to figure it out. And one of the things that came along and helped everybody figure it out, as much as people are going to hate me saying this, was cash for clunkers. You know that and the difference was back then is even if you had good credit, it was next to impossible to get approved for a car loan because of the banking issues, the banking crisis. So it took something along the lines of cash for clunkers to be able to bring people back into the market. It wasn't the issues weren't quality issues; they were financial collapse issues of a global scale. Okay, banking collapses on a global scale, um, and so yeah, it took something like cash for clunkers to bring people back in the market. I mean, we blew through $2 billion worth of government money in 2 weeks, whatever it was. But that got people back in the market. That was kind of like kick-started the industry again. What do you do today if you're Nissan? You ain't hoping for cash for clunkers because that's not it. Although every one of your cars would probably qualify for the clunker part.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a little salt in the wound there, Ray.
I'm sorry, and I
Yeah,
and I don't and I
but
don't
what?
mean it. I don't mean it to hurt your friend. But they've got major issues that they need to address on a corporate level, and I think they're trying to do that.
All right, you might not know this, but this is a brand new channel, and you know what we need for you to do? We need you to subscribe, because if you're watching this, I can see the numbers. You're not subscribed, so just hit that button for us. It doesn't cost you a thing, and it really helps us out. So in a lot of these Nissan dealerships, I mean, you've had to see it through some of the dealerships that you went through. If it's not coming from the brand, what do you do as a franchise dealership to make payroll, to get through some of these hard times? Is it all coming from service? Is it all coming from your used department? When new vehicles aren't moving, what are the levers that these dealerships can pull to make money? It seems like service has to be number one, I would assume.
Absolutely, you better play into the strength of your service department, and you have emails and phone numbers of every one of your customers who bought a car from you. Okay. So you market directly to them for service, to bring them back in for service, free service clinics, things of that nature. Yeah, you depend heavily on parts and service. If you're not selling new cars, yeah, you've got to find other ways to bring revenue into the store. Service departments have always been a good way to do that. You do captive marketing to your captive customer base. You bring them back in. You do what you can, um, and it's hard when sales are way down. It is. I mean, when I was at the Acura dealership, and we were selling on average 100 new cars and 50 used cars a month, and during the height of the Great Recession, when I got let go, we were down to selling 50 new cars and 20 to 25 used cars a month. And ultimately that dropped to the low month, the low water mark was 18 new cars. That's an 82% decline. So you can't make that up in sales. You got to depend on your service department for that. Now, listen, that was part of the Penske organization. So, as an organization, we had deep enough pockets to be able to see to it that these dealerships could meet their payroll obligations and everything else. But it was a real struggle, where everybody has to look in the mirror and figure out, okay, what is it that I can do to help? What can I give up that helps the business stay in business? Am I better off making, I don't know, 75 or 80% of what I was making in order to keep the business afloat, or do I demand to still make my 100% and then watch us all go under? So you have some real soul searching to do, but it, it, yeah, service is king. You need it.
Yeah, and in those hard times when you're going through, I know Nissan, they the dealers can actually order the vehicles that they want to have on the lot. Do you go through a situation where, okay, you try to have as few of these rogues on your lot as possible because you know that they're just eating away at your interest, your floor plan that you have to pay at all times? You're just trying to keep just what you can sell, bare minimum in those times, I would assume.
Yeah, in times like that, you really need to marry your inventory levels to your demand levels. You cannot afford, when you have no money coming in, you cannot afford to be sitting on millions of dollars worth of inventory and paying for that when nobody's coming in to buy your cars. So you need to do a much better job of managing that inventory, of looking at your normal daily sales rate per model line and marrying that sales rate to your inventory levels moving forward. And if that means turning down allocations, which the manufacturer hates that you do, you turn down the allocations, because, as I used to always remind the general manager, if we're bleeding red at the end of the year because we did the manufacturer a solid by always taking the cars they wanted us to take, well, they're not going to stroke us a check to make us whole. They're going to look at us and go, thank God for those fools. So it's you really have to manage your inventory and know where you need to be. And yeah, that's it's tough. I mean, if I was working at a Nissan dealership, I'd be looking at ways to get rid of my excess inventory so that my inventory levels could mirror what my demand levels are.
And I go to a lot of these Jeep Dodge Ram dealerships a lot, and I feel like they have different problems, but a lot of their problems with inventory seem to be very similar. But what I have seen is that on the front line of this Jeep Dodge Ram dealership that I go to, they don't have Jeeps sitting out there on their front line. What do they have on their front line? They have a whole row of used vehicles. And these are the vehicles that when a customer comes into the store, that's the first thing that they're going to pass. So in my estimation, that Jeep Dodge Ram dealership would much rather sell a customer one of those used vehicles right now than they would the new vehicles, because they're having to take so much money off of the new vehicles that I bet their margins are so razor thin. But on those used vehicles, a lot of those are going to be trade-ins, which they paid almost nothing for. And then they get to sell and they have such a higher profit margin on those vehicles. We think of Stellantis dealerships, Nissan dealerships. Do you think a lot of them, their play is becoming just a glorified used car dealer? Is that where they can make a lot more money than they can moving some of these new vehicles that it seems like nobody wants?
I would suggest to you that new car profit margins at Stellantis dealers and Nissan dealers are getting back to pre-pandemic level. And what do I mean by that? Prior to the pandemic, mass market brand dealerships, new car departments, the front end gross profit average on every new car sold was probably somewhere between $200 to $300 gross profit. Okay. Then you had the pandemic, and suddenly that became $2,000 to $3,000 or $2,500 to $3,500. 10 times what it had been. But if you're at a Nissan dealership that's struggling to sell cars, or if you're at a Stellantis dealership that's struggling to sell cars, my guess is that your new car front end gross profits are once again averaging probably somewhere between $200 to $300, which means you are depending on your used car department to compensate for that. And your used car gross profit average might be somewhere around $2,000 a car, maybe $2,500. So if you're a smart operator, yeah, it's the used cars the customers are going to see when they drive by to come into the dealership, because those are the cars that you're making money on, not the new cars. Yes, you have to sell the new cars to bring in the used cars, but you're selling, for so many years, new car sales departments at many, many, many dealerships were a losing proposition. They were not a profit center for a dealership. Many new car departments operated at a loss for a
Let,
long.
let me let me pause you for 1 second, because we have a question that pertains to all this right here. We're
Yes.
talking about, okay, what levers can these dealerships pull to make money when they're not selling their new cars? But Adam has a good question here, saying besides cars and trucks, how do dealers make money? And Ray's about to tell you exactly right here.
It's service. It's parts and service. It's finance and insurance on the few cars that you are selling. And if you find that you can be making 10 times the amount of gross profit on used cars as you do on new cars, then you concentrate on being in the used car business. Okay. And that way the new cars can be a loss leader so that you can make money in used cars, finance and insurance, parts and service. And yeah, new cars just become a price leader to bring people in so you can get the other stuff.
And I think a problem that a lot of these dealerships are going to have to deal with for the next few years is there's tons of turnover in car dealerships for salespeople. So what in the last 4 years, there's only been one car market, and it's been that, okay, you can sell stuff at MSRP or higher, and the dealership makes a lot of money selling these cars. Well, now we're going back to, okay, dealerships actually have to play the volume game again. They have to get incentives from dealers. Where they're going to make money is on their back end products. And a lot of these salespeople, even a lot of these sales managers now, have never experienced that market. So I'm very curious to see how a lot of these salespeople, these sales staff, these sales managers adapt to this different kind of market and how they interact with customers, because it's a whole different ball game even today than it was 6 months, 12 months ago. And you're probably really glad that you don't have to deal with shifting how these salespeople think now. And you would have had to do it had you still been in the game.
Well, you have to realize that for 2 to 3 years, salespeople didn't have to sell. They just had to show up. They just said, either you want it or you don't. Okay, that was the extent of their sales expertise. Hey, Mr. Customer, either you want it or the guy behind you does. It's up to you. Okay, that's not selling. That's order taking. And so today, salespeople actually have to learn the craft of selling, and it is a craft. Okay, it's an art form. It takes a lifetime to develop it. And so to take somebody that all they knew how to say was, well, either you're taking it or the other guy is, and turn them into an actual honest to goodness salesperson where they could become consultative and they actually ask questions, and not only ask the questions but listen for the answers. Okay, so it's tough to turn those people into a real qualified salesperson. But that's, and yes, am I thankful I don't have to do that anymore? You're damn right I am. I am I thankful that I'm out of retail automotive? Yes. Do I wake up any morning and go, man, I wish I had to go to the dealership today? I do not. Okay. I did it. I did it for 43 years. That was enough. I can share my knowledge. I can share some of my expertise with people. I can even overlook the comments that say, "Oh, well, you screwed people for 43 years and now you want to be a nice guy." No, I was a nice guy when you thought I was screwing you. I wasn't screwing. I was trying to actually answer your damn questions and trying to improve the process. Not everybody in automotive sales is a thief. Not everyone. Brandon's not. I wasn't. Now, that's not to say that Brandon isn't interested in making a profit or I wasn't interested in making a profit. I was. Profit is not a dirty word. That's why most businesses exist. Okay. It was how we went about making a profit that we tried to do it in a legitimate manner, much like Brandon does it in his legitimate manner. It's so, yeah, yeah, I am so thankful I'm out of it. I'm so thankful I don't have to deal with the public, and I'm so thankful I don't have to spend like 8 hours a day trying to educate people. And when I say educate people, it's both the salespeople and the customers.
And now we yell at people through a camera, and it's much better. But I still have to deal with the public, so
Well, you do.
I do have to get up and go to the dealership, and I'm ready to get to the time period when I am like you and say, okay, I don't have to go to the dealership today.
Hey, if you liked what we talked about today, and I'm not sure why you would, but I'm hoping you did, we need you to not only like this video, but we need you to subscribe. I can't even say subscribe. We need you to subscribe as well.